This video is sponsored by Wing Technology, your ultimate flight sim hardware solution.
Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing very well. Today is the second video in a new series we're doing, looking at fast jets versus other fast jets in close combat dogfights within the ACM envelope. The jets that are chosen by you guys for this week is the Mirage 2000C versus the JF-17. The way we do this is we have a talk about it, we study their kinematics, we study their weapon systems, we study how we think they're going to perform. Then we're going to go and do 20, 30 dogfights. We've actually done this, but you know, as far as you're going to see, we're going to go and do 20, 30 dogfights to really get a handle of how they perform against each other. And we'll do things to keep everything fair, like swap pilots between each airframe equally and stuff like that. And then at the end, we're going to give you the answer, which is the better dogfight, if there is such a thing, or how one's better than the other. As ever, it's pointless me trying to explain this to you because I don't know, but I do have my experts with me. So from the Grim Reapers Seytel competition team, we've got Bear. Say hello.
Hello, Bear.
Le Crep.
Hey.
Do we have Penguin?
Yes, we do.
And we've got a special guest. Now, this is mainly because the aircraft we've got today are his forte, and you probably know him if you know of us. His name is Loblo. He's known through the community as a very top brass dogfighter, and he runs a Discord server called the BFM ACM Clinic, which I'm part of, and I'm trying to get into it, trying to find the spare time to get into it. And we've had him on the channel before. Loblo, say hello.
Hello.
First of all, if I may, guys, I'd like to talk about the kinematics of the planes. I've gone through and tested these. Now, these are by no means, professional tests, but they're about as good as we're going to get in DCS. One thing I always say, a caveat at the beginning, DCS is known probably as the most realistic, military flight sim out there that the average guy can get hold of. However, it's not perfect. So when we look at aircraft, it's no good necessarily looking at them in the real life. We really need to see how they perform in DCS, in the DCS environment. So on my left screen here, we've got the Mirage 2000 versus the JF-17. And the first thing I'd like to say is it's going to be interesting today because of how equally they're matched. So low altitude speed. We've got Mach 1.21 for the Mirage 2000, 1.08 for the JF. High speed at optimal altitude. Mirage 2000, 45k, Mach 2.32. Okay, this isn't quite going how I said, but just bear with me. JF-17, 30,000 feet, 1.7 between friends. Low altitude acceleration, which I consider much more important, obviously, in the kind of thing that we're looking at today, close range fighting. Mirage 2000, this is the amount of seconds to do that there. 20.22 seconds. The JF, 20.65 seconds. Nail on identical. High altitude acceleration. The JF-17, 26 seconds. Mirage, 27.4 seconds. The Mirage lagging behind there at high altitude for whatever reason. I think because of the bypass size on the engine, but don't quote me on that. Climb rate. Very important, kind of a real power to weight ratio test. Mirage 2000, this is from a QRA, 1 minute and 1 second. The JF, 1 minute and 7 seconds. Climb rate 600 knots, 26.9 seconds for the JF, 27.7 seconds for the Mirage. So what we've seen is one being ahead and then the other being ahead, and one being ahead and the other being ahead. And what you'll see is they're going to average out to be about the same. Max sustained turn rate at sea level, at 50% gas, with a 0 drag index. We've got the JF with a band there of 360 to 380 TAS at 21 degrees per second. The Mirage, almost identical, with rounding up errors, nail on identical, but 20 degrees per second. There's about half a degree per second in it in reality. Max sustained angle of attack with 10% gas, 0 drag index, which we find really important. Both identical at 26 degrees per second because fly-by-wire, presumably. I don't know, you guys tell me. Instant altitude doesn't really mean anything in this, but out of interest, 95,000 feet and 75,000 feet. Staying altitude, 66. I've accidentally got the MiG in there, and 55. And roll rates, both, by the looks of it, very fast. So at 300 knots, and the Mirage is 220 degrees per second, 200 degrees per second. The JF, that is almost identical in terms of roll rate. And at high speed, we've got 275, which is amazing for the Mirage 2000, and then the limiter kicks in on the JF, I believe, at 220. That's the kinematics. So although they differ test per test, the whole thing averaged out. I've always found them almost identical. Any thoughts on the kinematics, guys?
Yeah, there's one important statistic which isn't there, Cap, and that is how fast these aeroplanes can slow down.
Oh,
and in that department, the Mirage 2000 can slow down much, much faster than the JF-17 can. And that is quite, you'll see that's going to become quite an important factor in these dogfights because not only can the Mirage slow down quicker, but it can also perform better in the one circle fight. So, if we look at the two circle figures there, you're right to say that they're very similar. However, the Mirage is going to try and force a particular type of fight, being a one circle fight a lot of the time, and its ability to engineer that fight is aided by the fact that it can slow down so much quicker than the JF-17 can. And that also plays out to its benefit in another regard as well, and that's the ability to force an overshoot. So, having that up its sleeve, it can disengage whenever it wants from a fight and run. And then when the JF-17 is pursuing it, it has almost like an exclusive ability to force an overshoot that the JF-17 really can't deal with, because it won't be able to actually slow down until it gets somewhere below 400 knots, whereas the Mirage doesn't have that limitation on it. And being a delta, it can come to almost a stop in midair and blow the JF-17 out in front of it, and then just get back into burner, and all of a sudden it's got the advantage again. So that statistic there is maybe one that, in this particular example of Mirage 2000 versus JF-17, would be worth having on paper, because it is very decisive.
Absolutely, and it just shows how there are things that aren't measured here that are going to take a massive toll. When we talk about the deacceleration, are we talking about purely air braking? Are we talking about purely using the air brakes, or a mixture of that and using the angle of attack of the aircraft?
Both, yeah. So typically when a Mirage tries to force an overshoot, depending on how the pilot wants to initiate it, but a good way to initiate it is actually just to take idle to begin with, so that the pilot who's chasing him doesn't actually see a rapid planform change of the Mirage. He's still basically looking at the tail aspect of the Mirage, but if he's not paying attention, what will happen is the VC will start to bloom. It'll start to grow, and once that VC starts to grow to say 50 to 100 knots, the Mirage pilot will rapidly snap air brakes out and go for a full hard pull. And there the JF-17 has zero response for that, other than to just pitch up into the vertical and try to create some displacement, and hope that the Mirage spends everything, absolutely bleeds down, and then the JF-17 can try to raid over the top. But the point there is that the deceleration abilities of the Mirage are both air brake and alpha.
Very interesting. Just very quickly, weapon system, as far as I'm aware, they're both equal. So non-Hob Fox 2s, no helmet mounted display, and both got an air-to-air cannon. So do you guys see any massive differences between weapon systems, close range?
The JF-17 cannon is pointed downward. It's more an air-to-ground cannon than an air-to-air. So you have to pull way more AOA to be able to shoot at your target.
Right, well that's going to be a real problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's canted 5 degrees downwards on the JF-17.
And also the Mirage gun has a reputation for being notoriously difficult to learn when you first jump into the Mirage, because the gun sight is actually a historical gun sight, meaning that it's showing where a round already fired will land, not where a round yet to be fired will land. And that's quite different to a lot of the gun sights and EEGs that you find on Western Gen 4s. So there's that, but also the snake in the Mirage is next to useless in most BFM situations. So what you'll find is that most experienced Mirage pilots in DCS will get their gun skills over time by hundreds of merges, and in the end they never use the gun sight. They just predict mentally where the rounds, it's almost like using the force, they just say, okay, well, for this distance and speed, I would expect that my rounds are going to land about here, and that's what happens.
Well, that's fascinating, and another thing learned there, because personally I'm not a Mirage pilot. It's just a plane I never got into for whatever reason, and I don't think I've ever hit anything with a gun predictor. F-18, you put the thing on the thing and you fire, and it kills the guy, right? Mirage, I've never understood it. So it's fascinating that you guys are almost pulling your own lead by eye, like a Spitfire or something. That's interesting. So you're using it by tracer, or literally just by experience? Deflection shot. You should be aiming about there because you've done it so many times.
A combination of both, depending on the situation. So there are certain situations where you don't have enough time to first fire, and we could talk more about this later. But there are a variety of different gun techniques I use in the Mirage. One of them is to lay a trap. So I will literally put my nose out in front by a certain distance and wait for the other airplane to approach, and then I'll shoot right before he gets there, and usually that works. It'll rip a wing off, or kill the pilot or whatever. There are other situations where you're two circle and you just need to get the nose out and aligned with him enough. And this is where the snake indicator on the Mirage gun sight is really misleading, and if you try to follow it, you'll be off by a lot. Whereas if you just do it by eye, you have a much better chance of landing those shots, particularly as the target gets further away. So once the target's out past 3,000 feet, you really have to just all do it by feel. And that's where, tracers definitely do help you, because you can shoot a burst and then test and adjust from there based on what you saw. But other than that, there's a lot of times in the Mirage where you just have to, particularly for head-on shots, or if you coming for a high aspect shot, just put the nose where you think it's going to help you. And in that regard, the little cross at the top helps you. The little fixed gun sight indicator will help you a lot. And there's actually another type of gun sight in the Mirage that helps, but I don't use it.
Roger. And big respect to you guys that, how you guys fight like this is beyond me. But the guys that sit and literally, and the only way of learning this is by experience, right? You do it hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. And in the end, you can do this kind of stuff, which is kudos to you guys for putting the time in to do stuff like that, right?
Cap, I haven't mentioned to you that we had help from a Mrs. Crepe. So, my man is Mrs. Le Crepe. Okay. And, she's exceptionally good in the JF-17, so we reached out to get a little bit of help in that side as well.
Okay, guys, I've already learned lots by that, and I'm looking forward to this. Anything else before we get cracking?
There is one thing, and that is the roll rate. 220 degrees or 219 versus 200. It's not much, but the Mirage still does have a higher roll rate, and you'll see. I'll point them out in these fights as they develop. But the high roll rate of the Mirage does actually help it in certain situations, because for survivability, there are times when you want to get your lift vector out of plane with the other jet, and having a higher roll rate enables you to do that. So it allows you to snap from, say, 30 or 40 degrees left angle of bank to 40 degrees right angle of bank, and pull out of plane in completely the opposite direction. And the Mirage is very good at doing that. So its survivability in what would normally be a head-on type situation is actually higher than some other aeroplanes, simply because it can get out of plane so much quicker.
First couple are guns only.
Off we go. So LB is in the Mirage. Mrs. don't know. Le Crepe is in the Mrs. is in the Jeff. There we go. Half speed. Just feel free to chat away, guys. Once you're comfortable and you know what's going on there. Both about Mach 1. No, sorry. What speed? Wow,
we were a bit fast on this one.
Yeah.
On the first one, yeah.
Sorry, I should just quickly familiarise everyone with the parameters, and then I'll definitely let everyone go. Name, jet, altitude in hundreds of feet up, if they're heading up or down. Mach, obviously. Calibrated airspeed, near enough. Indicated airspeed for what we're talking about. Angle of attack in degrees. G in gravities on Earth. Turn rate in degrees per second. Circle, what's the word, guys? Radius. Turn radius in miles and then feet. Kinematic energy, half mv squared. Potential energy, mgh. And that's it. Right, so we've got a merge, and we've got Mrs. Le Crepe going up, and LB's going around the side. So it's a very fast merge to begin with. Is there any reason why you want a Mach 1.2 merge, guys?
They might not have told them that it was 450 in the beginning.
It doesn't matter. I mean, you do what they want to do as far as I'm concerned. I'm just wondering why you're going in so fast. I personally would go much slower, but it's just...
Yeah, the reason is, and we practice this in the clinic a lot, and it tends to be the staple of all our merges, they tend to be fast, is because... going into the oblique vertical with a lot of speed gives you a lot of options. If you think about it, and this is very much a DCSism in the BFM world, having spoken to real fighter pilots, because having spoken to the real guys, a lot of the fights between Vipers, Eagles, all end up rating around on the horizon 2 circle, and the vertical development that we see in DCS dogfights is really a DCSism. Over the course of hundreds and thousands of fights, we've worked out that taking a lot of speed into a merge and taking that into oblique vertical gives you the most options, because you can continue to oblique vertical and end up over the top at 400 knots, or you can then overbank and take your jet back down through the horizon and create a low to high remerge. And having all that speed, when you get on the hard pull at the merge at 9 Gs, allows you to end up over the top with a significant potential energy advantage if he or she decides to go into horizontal two circle, for example. If you all of a sudden end up 5,000 feet above them and you're still doing 400 knots, your advantage in that fight is significant.
Roger. I always say it's a bit like currency, but having lots and lots of money that you can spend when you want. Roger, guys. I'm sorry, I've got to pause and ask. That's a fascinating thing you've said there. And this is one of the things we always say, DCS is not real life. It does vary to real life for all sorts of reasons. But why did the pilots say they always end up rating around the horizon? Why aren't they going up? If we find it so much better going up, why aren't they?
Fox 2, because at the clinic, 99% of what we do is we train guns only BFM, because that's, we're training for guns only BFM tournaments, but in reality they have to worry about Fox 2s, and skylighting your aeroplane against a cold blue sky is not a good survival strategy.
Right. Do they ever train for guns? It's unlikely you're going to have a guns F-16 versus a guns Mirage in real life. Do they even bother training for that kind of thing?
From what I've heard, it's not trained anywhere near as much as what we do in DCS. Because
it's a waste of time, because they're just not really going to use it, aren't they? They'll be dead before they get that. Very interesting, and it makes sense. Okay, guys, I don't know if you've been watching or have anything to comment. It's kind of weird. I don't know. I'm not really qualified to talk about this, but let me know what you think. If you guys can see.
It must be noticed that everyone but me was in VR this day when it was shot. So the dynamics, the pilot dynamics is a bit different because you have to move way more in the plane. So
it's unchoreographed, unrehearsed, and no labels, full G.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's the hardest you can possibly make it.
Mm-hmm. So what we have emerged, they've both gone vertical, then they've gone into what I call a death spiral. I know it's not the proper name, it's just what I know it as. And eventually Red is got the lead here. And lead by, behind Blue, and is now just really trying to get the kill. And there's a kill. Yeah. So, LB, because you were in that, any comments on that?
I was too busy talking to actually look at the fight, but I noticed at the start I did go oblique vertical with a 9G pull, and I was definitely pulling more G off the merge. If you looked at the turn radiuses, I think my mile was up around 1.5 miles, and my turn radius was sub 1 mile. So I was definitely pulling harder at the start, trying to get those angles. And she still got quite vertical, I think. So she ended up over the top with more potential energy than me. But I wasn't really paying too much attention while I was talking there to what our relative energy states were. But one thing I'll say is that, and it didn't really play out in this fight, but one of the most important things, apart from having a good psychological mindset when you come into a BFM merge, is to have a merge plan and a remerge plan. Mm-hmm. And that's something that a lot of people don't think about, is what do they want the remerge to look like? Because a lot of these fights, particularly once they start getting more aggressive and at a higher level, I'm not saying this wasn't a high level fight, but what I am saying is that these fights can literally be over within 20 seconds. And usually that happens when someone has come into the fight and they haven't had a clear idea in their mind of what they want the remerge to look like, or they don't pay attention to what the other aeroplane is doing post-merge, or they lose sight at the merge. So it's one of those three things. And if they lose sight, they can basically guarantee that they're going to be dead in the next 30 seconds to 1 minute, unless they're able to pull something very special out of the bag. But if they don't take note of, and this is something that's very peculiar to the Mirage, and I was actually watching another content creator interview a pilot, an RAF pilot, who got to actually fly the Mirage 2000, and he raised a very good point that makes a lot of sense to me. He said the Mirage 2000, in reality, this is in the real world, the way you fly it depends on whether you're fighting against another Mirage or whether you're doing dissimilar air combat against something else. And if you're fighting against another Mirage, it's very much one circle, very dynamic, very extreme maneuvering. But against other airplanes, you need to mix it up depending on what you're doing. Now here we've got a dissimilar air combat situation, albeit with, as you pointed out on paper, two airplanes that are quite similar to one another, except for the fact that the Mirage outperforms the JF in one circle and can decelerate quicker than it. And I think the deciding factor in this fight is actually when I decide to decelerate quicker than the JF and get the nose on one circle down the track. Is this back to the start, or is this
negative? We'll just come on to the next one because we've got a lot. But we're on fight 2 here, guys, and I just want to pick up on something LB said there, which is that you're going to fly differently depending on what plane you're going up against, which is, well, it's not that obvious, but I guess when you think about it, it is obvious. I mean, that's why we've come up for this idea of only looking at one type of plane versus another type of plane for this, because when we were planning this series, what we were looking at is, okay, how good is the Tomcat versus everything? Well, it doesn't work, because the Tomcat will fly against the Mirage one way, or fly against an F-15 in one way, or fly against a flanker another way. So the only way we found of doing it is doing, these separate little snapshots of A versus B, which is another thing that you've brought up there, which is good, guys.
One thing I'll just add as well, I don't fly the JF-17 in BFM nearly as much as I fly the Mirage. So there's that, which is, you're going to see I'm going to get my butt kicked here in a minute. But also, in my opinion, my humble opinion, I should say, the Mirage is a far superior dogfighter than the JF-17. I think I don't want to make any spoilers about what's about to happen, but towards the end we can talk about that more. But I think you're going to see that the Mirage is a friendlier BFM platform than the JF.
Roger, guys. Okay, we're merging here. LB's now switched over to Thunder to keep it fair. Lecrep's in the Mirage. 1.1 for Lecrep, 1.25 or 26 for LB. Off they go. Are they going vertical? What are they doing? Boom. Let's try and get a beat on that. So Lecrep's pulled 8-9G hard in the Mirage up. LB's going up slightly, but it's turning.
Converting some speed in potential energy. I think it was your first flight in the JEFs this time.
Roger. And
so
can I just
you have to be.
Can I say something really obvious? LB said this earlier, but you wouldn't go up like that if it was a missile fight, right? We got that clear, right?
Yeah.
So they are only going up like this because they know that guy can't, just pull the nose back and quickly shoot this guy. They're only doing this because it's guns. This is obvious, but sorry, carry on, guys.
One thing that came up a few times in those fights is the fog building up in the JF-17 canopy. So it's pretty hard to keep your eyes on your target when your canopy is fogging. And then you have to find the anti-fog button. So, yeah, sometimes it's a bit.
It won't be a problem for much longer. I did speak to Deck and they're removing that if you haven't started from the ground, but it's just unfortunate the timing, isn't it?
That is actually in this fight. That actually is a decisive factor because later on I get offensive on the crepe here, but then my canopy fogs up and I have to go down into the cockpit to find the defog button and stop fighting him for 10 seconds or so. And then he ends up being able to raid around on me because of that. I'm
just going to roll back here because this is really interesting. So LB goes low round the side. Blue goes up high, which is where I'd want to be, kind of like a bird, jump down on them with their energy. But look how LB reacts really quickly when he realizes that Blue's about to get on him. Watch him kind of go up and force what I think is going to become vertical kind of scissors, but we'll see. So Red sees the threat now, presumably. And what are you doing here? Are you kind of slowing the fight down on purpose, or this move here?
Yeah, well, there's actually the situation that you saw unfold prior to that. If you just wind back to where Lecrep is above me, this is not a mistake. What's happening here? Me staying level like this and staying fast, building my energy state is on purpose because what I'm trying to do is maximize my survivability. If I pull up into him nose on, it's a 50-50. It's a head-on shot. But by staying fast and then pulling up and getting him to flush out beneath me, I have the chance to then reverse one circle with the assistance of God's G over the top here to spend everything and try and get a high aspect shot through the top of his airplane. So it's a low to high remerge that's engineered with the hope of potentially getting a high aspect shot, but he ends up keeping his energy quite nicely there, and doesn't go for a max G pull up straight into me, so he avoids that situation.
Roger. And you're into this awkward situation that a noob like me would call scissors, where you're both trying to constantly pull into each other, and it has this oscillating effect. Le Crepes exited it.
Yeah.
Both about the same speed, 350 knots, 300 knots. And this, I think this is where he's doing his canopy, I think, because he's kind of giving up the chase here, I think. Maybe not.
Yeah, here I know he's behind me, so I just try to build speed and and try to outspeed him, but...
Were you purposely trying to exit the kind of scissors there?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because I wanted to... I know the Mirage is a pretty good climber. Yeah. So every time you'll see, but every time I try to climb, and gets more speed than the other one.
Roger. I think Obi's disengaging here, so I'm just going to scroll up. And
I think
back in. Okay, so it's going to be a restart almost, pretty much from here then.
If there is one we cancelled because of the fog, so maybe this one. I don't know.
That was the 10 seconds there where I was trying to find the fog button when you saw me just level nose low.
Yeah. Just trying to find him again now then and re-engage. Now
I'm just trying to extend.
Okay, well that's allowed Blue to find you and get on his tail anyway, so it's going to spice things up, which is nice for us, the valued viewers. Okay, Crep is gaining. He's also got nearly 9G on, and you've got 9G on exactly. No, yes?
Yeah.
No, sorry, I got the G wrong. Turn rate. Yeah.
If you just pause it here for a second, Cap, there's something very important we need to talk about.
Send.
And that is how different this situation is for these two airplanes based on the statistic I talked about before, deceleration. So the Jeff has nowhere near the deceleration ability of what the Mirage does. So in this situation here, the JF-17 pilot knows that forcing an overshoot on the Mirage is next to impossible, because even if the JF-17 pilot got down to 400 knots CAS and then popped boards out and went for a max alpha pull, the Mirage is just going to be able to stay behind him no matter what, because it can slow down so much faster. Whereas if you reverse the situation, the Mirage is in a really happy place because it knows that it can force the overshoot at will. So this situation here is what actually defines a lot of these fights, depending on who's out in front.
So it's not a lot. Sorry, go ahead.
I was saying, if you are diving in the Jeff above 400 CAS, you can't slow down. Air brakes out, jiggling everywhere. You won't slow down anyway. So, and it happens to every one of us, I think.
So what's the game if you're in front of, if you have a normal plane like a Jeff and you're in front of a Mirage? What's your game plan then? You know you can't outbrake, overshoot. You can't force an overshoot, which is generally your number one plan, isn't it? What?
Yeah. Well, the what you're trying to effectively do is trick the Mirage into spending everything to decelerate, because if the Mirage gets sub 200 knots, it's going to take the Mirage quite a while to get back to 400. Right. So if you can fool the Mirage into doing everything pull to slow down, whereas you haven't done that, then what happens is you've retained enough energy, and because the Jeff does accelerate quite well, you can perhaps get back up to 380 and begin rating and generating angles back on the Mirage in two circle over the top that way, or even not even in vertical two circle, perhaps oblique two circle. You can start to etch out some angles by the sheer fact that the Mirage, instead of actually fighting you in the rate war, is wallowing trying to get back to a half decent rate speed.
Right, okay, so to summarize that, try and fool him into slowing down, getting to 200 knots or whatever without you slowing down that much, and then go back to what your plane is good at, which is getting in your two circle or whatever.
Exactly.
Here we are very, very slow.
Right, so you've wound each other right down, haven't you?
Yeah.
And you're both well, stall speed basically 100 and 180. But the interesting thing is Red's still alive with a decent Mirage pilot behind him, so he's done something right.
Yeah, but Low is pretty good. I mean, he's a really good dogfighter, and I'm as
Yeah,
not nearly as good as
everyone here has different skills as well, but as long as we mix and match airframes, it's the best we can do to keep it fair. Spraying and praying with this gun sight, which I know is really hard.
Cool. Really good kill.
Yep, got him in the end.
So,
you just wore you down, I guess, until you had nothing left.
Lecrep did a good job, and as I say, I'm looking forward to potentially when the Jeff doesn't have the fog issue anymore, because that was decisive for a few of us in these Mirage Jeff fights. Having to disengage to go down into the cockpit to find the fog button, you can't afford. In a lot of situations in BFM, when you're up against a comparable pilot, you can't afford to come off the pool for 1 second, let alone 10.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, it's a massive problem, but like I say, it should be fixed next time. But we'll see. Okay, guys, we're on number 3 here. Is it guns only still?
Yeah, but we did it again because of the fog.
Same one. Okay, so we can sort of disregard the other one, but there was some interesting talking points, so we shan't. Okay, fair merge. Mach 1 point. Look at that. Look how LB's got exactly the same as last time, 1.26. And Crep not too dissimilar. Guns fight, so we can go over the top. It's exactly the same, isn't it? The Crep pretty much vertical over. It will be with that left hook again. So they're stubborn. And let's talk about, you briefly mentioned about having game plans. That's not to say you just go by the game plan and don't, adapt. Obviously, you do adapt. But was that your kind of plan A then, that left kind of semi-climb?
I know that I'm generally not going to be able to out one circle the Mirage. So spending everything at the merge for a nose-on shot is a bad game plan against the Mirage. Not least of which because it's a 50-50. And the JF-17 gun sight as Lecrep canted down at 2.5 degrees because it's an air-to-ground gun, so it's really not well suited to head-on shots. The Mirage in that regard is much better. So you really want to avoid going head-to-head with the Mirage when you're in the JF-17. So what's important is you maintain a good energy state, and then try to maintain survivability on the remerge, end up above him. So in order to end up above him after the remerge, you need to start out beneath him. But let's see what happens here.
I was just looking at the energy states, and they're almost equaling out there, but you were doing better until this kind of turn here. So you're going to go up this time. He's going to go down.
Now, you see here, I try to build some vertical displacement, and vertical displacement in BFM is super important because what it is it's time to get nose on, and you can set up a little bit of a trap sometimes where if you've got enough vertical displacement, you can get your nose pointing out in front of him before he's got a chance to get his nose back up at you to shoot you, and so this is what I'm trying to do here.
If that was a decent gun, that was almost a solution you had there. Okay, and you've got your energy back.
Actually, I will pause if you wouldn't mind pausing. There's something there's something that's worth bringing up here as well. And again, talking to real fighter pilots, they don't go for head-on shots, and they don't try to go for high aspect shots. They try to go for control zone BFM, which is 3,000 feet behind the other airplane, and inside that wedge, so to speak. And in DCS, we tend to go for front-on shots a lot more, and we also try to go for high aspect shots a lot more. But there is an important decision-making process that you need to go through a lot of times in DCS BFM, where you just need to make that conscious decision to not get greedy and go for a high aspect shot, and instead just play it conservative and go for lag BFM and try and fight for the control zone. And a lot of that will depend on who you're fighting. Now, in a case where you're fighting Mirage and you know that it has an insane ability to decelerate and also to out one circle you, going for a high aspect shot against an aeroplane that has those capabilities is quite often a bad game plan, because your continuation from, if you miss, you're carrying quite a lot of speed and you're traveling perpendicular to that Mirage. You end up flushed out beneath him. He all of a sudden has this ability to almost just drop an anchor in midair and stop and just point his nose at you and shoot you. So you want to be very careful about trying to go for a high aspect shot on a Mirage, only because quite often it will just get you killed.
So that's an interesting point on what real pilots do. So real pilots, rather than going for these fancy snapshots, which are kind of hit or miss, go for the more sensible, properly getting behind shot. Now, what would we describe that as? Mature fighting? What is that? What, sensible fighting?
Well, it's called Control Zone BFM, and so they're spending a lot of their time actually flying in lag rather than flying pure lead, because they're not just trying to get a fleeting, half-second snapshot off. It's not in many cases, it's not even half a second. It's much less than that. But they're going for the 2-second tracking shot. And talking to some Air Force pilots, I think RAF pilots, I was talking to a guy who flew Tornadoes once, and he said, when I was BFMing him, he said, okay, the way we're going to do this today is it's not a valid kill unless you've got Pipper on and you call out to me tracking, and then that's it. That's what would validate the kill. And in his eyes, it wasn't going to be valid if I just put Pipper on him for a fraction of a second and shot him through the top of his airplane.
So you've got to get proper position to win a fight. Then in that case, interesting. Okay, right, and that's how it is. Right, where are we? So Mirage is heading down.
I must say that wasn't the Tornado pilot who I flew against most recently, just in case that comes up later. That was a different Tornado pilot.
So basically in the same situation as the previous fight. Me in front, trying to fly away.
Extending.
But here, Cap, it's worth pointing out, if you just pause for a second, sorry. This situation is actually in Le Crep's favor, and this comes up in BFM Clinic a lot. It's very rare to be scared of the airplanes in front of you, but in this situation, I'm actually scared of Le Crep because I have to respect his ability to force an overshoot. So you see this distance, 5,700 feet, and you're going to see how tentatively I creep in and manage my speed to get the shot. I'm not going balls to the wall to close down that distance to 2,000 feet as quickly as possible, because if he decides to go for a max alpha pull with idle and boards, I'm screwed. I can't afford to just rush in there and try and kill him. I have to be really careful here that I ease in and not give him an ability to flush me out front.
Right, that's interesting. And would that apply to any other aircraft being in front, or just the Mirage with this ability? And
No, it applies to anything that's going to fight the Mirage, except for perhaps a flanker or an F-15, because the F-15 can really just flat plate against the airflow as well and slow down. But basically against anything else other than a flanker or an F-15, the Mirage has it in terms of just being able to flush them out in front.
Very interesting. Okay, so we're going to see a controlled, mature closing from the rear now, then, rather than just doing a me burners on and charging in with my guns.
Very, 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 very tentatively, just easing my way in.
So, although obviously Mirage is going faster, distance is decreasing because you're cutting the corner.
Yeah, so actually, and just if you mind pausing just there really quickly, you noticed me just fire off a test burst, and there's a good reason for that, because the JF-17, unlike any other airplane in DCS, you have to actually feed the gun through the MFD, and I'm sure everybody here knows that, and a lot of people in the audience will know that as well. But how many times you end up in the JF and you go to fire the gun, and nothing happens? Yeah, you got to feed it. So sometimes it's just worth testing the guns before things get spicy.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to the point in the JF where, I mean, I'm never going to learn it, really, really well. I've got to the point where, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't have an air-to-air gun, so just rely on missiles. Whereas everything else is obviously one button, fire the gun. I can't sit there and think how to in a dogfight. Okay, do I load it? Where do I load it? Where do I press that? And there's other stuff as well that makes the gun awkward, I know. But anyway, I force you guys into this situation, so you're going to suck it up. But okay, so we're still reeling him in, 4,000 feet. But very controlled. What are you up to, Le Crep? You've just gone vertical. I'm not sure what you're up to.
Because I try to apply some strategies I learned in the meantime, but yeah, seeing the type view, I'm seeing that it's not working very well.
Roger. I mean, one thing and this is really layman's understanding, which is what I've got, guys. I can never understand why the guy in the front can never get away. But if I'm in the front and I try and just get away, this guy in the rear always seems to catch up. And I see it here because whatever I do, this guy can always cut my turn.
if you just pause for a second, I'll just point something out. Have a look at our G loading at the moment. So Le Crep, for most of that, if you just wind back maybe a second or two, he's actually at negative G, and there's a very good. I think he was at negative G.
Yeah,
so here is at minus 0.5. There's a very good reason for why we're down around 0 G, and that's because what we're trying to do is unload the wings, because when wings, I'm sure you know this, but when wings are producing lift, they're also producing induced drag. And drag is bad when you're going uphill, right? Because you want to maintain every knot you possibly can. So what we're doing is we're physically forcing the stick forward into beyond neutral. We're actually pushing through the neutral slot to unload the wings, so we preserve as much airspeed as we can on the way up. Now, there's one other thing worth mentioning very quickly. Sorry to hog the airtime here, but the Mirage 2000, as far as I'm aware, doesn't have RAM air modeled. So because as it gets up into the thinner air, the air becomes less dense. The engine should be producing less thrust. As far as I'm aware, the M2000 doesn't model that. So there's a lot of situations where in dissimilar air combat in DCS, an aeroplane is going to try and run away from a Mirage in the vertical, and he's going to find, even in an F-14, we found the Mirage will just mow him down.
Yeah, it drives me nuts. Because I know he hasn't got that power to weight ratio to do that, so it does F me off a bit. But anyway, yeah. So so you're on your bicycle and you're putting your heads down, trying to get your drag down as much as you can. And he has got speed on you, so I just find it interesting that Le Crep's got speed, but he's struggling to actually increase the distance, all by very much anyway.
Yeah, that was the idea, to profit from a smaller and lighter airplane to try and outrun him in the.
And are you trying to outrun him so that you've got space to kind of turn around and re-engage?
Yeah, at this point, 200 knots, I have to build speed back up, because you can't do really more. And we are already at we were at 40,000 feet. So at some point you have to get back down.
Right. Yeah. Just can't shake him. Like a pitbull.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It was the word for the whole night. Once he is stuck in your 60 state there. I think it's a way to see how a brain pilot is flying against an excited
French pilot.
Yeah, French pilot. Yeah. Yeah, definitely more experience and on the red side right now.
So LB had
I'm reacting to what he is doing. Basically.
So LB put himself out there. He went for his kind of high aspect shot. Didn't pay off, and so it's almost neutralised the fight, hasn't it? Slightly in Red's favour, I suppose. Actually,
yeah.
Head on.
This was very close. Very, very close.
There was traded hits though.
Yeah, there was, but we almost collided.
You saw even with me. If you just pause it for a second and maybe just rewind to if you're a little bit before that, just right after I take the high aspect shot, there's an important moment there. And if this was Mirage v Mirage, this would have played out differently. But the fact that the gun on the JF-17 is an air-to-ground gun makes a difference here, because what it means is I have to actually pitch up an extra 2.5 degrees before I get a head-on shot when we come out of this. And what you see is that I think I ease here and I allow a little bit of lateral separation to build, even just momentarily.
G's gone down. Yeah.
See that? And that's to give me enough time to get the nose back up, because I know that if Le Crep gets on the hard pull, it's going to be very close in terms of who gets nose on first. And you see, I misjudge it by maybe a few seconds, maybe even less than that. And look here, in a Mirage, that would have been a head-on shot for me potentially, gunning him. But the gun being canted down in the Jeff makes all the difference. I don't get Pippa on there.
just going to quickly rewind that for my sanity. So let me just think what you're saying. So you're easing off here. So you're deliberately not turning at as quick rate as possible. That's to...
And if you pause for a sec, it's to allow the lateral distance between our two airplanes to grow to give me enough time to get my nose up to him.
Right. Okay. Okay. Interesting. And it ends up being about 50-50 by the looks of it, although obviously you've got the disadvantage of your weird gun. Okay, very good. Let's carry on where we got to. So you're going down in this typical kind of downward spiral now.
Well, Lecrep's got it from here. It should be an easy win, I think.
That was quite a good move there because it really dumped Lecrep there down 150 knots and you've gone up out of reach and somehow get better speed. Inverted fighting. Oh, he's dead. I think it just, yeah, fine. Okay, guys, very good. Well, I must say the Mirage definitely has it so far, guys.
Fight number 4, Bear versus Lecrape.
Guns?
Bear in the Mirage.
Is it guns?
Guns still. AFM, still guns.
Right.
Now, based on the different skill levels, I'm proud to put myself at the top of the list, provided you turn the list upside down. I don't follow conventional norms ever.
So, okay. So somebody, he's going to go up and Lecrep's going to go up and just drop down from his perch at some point and then gun you, I suppose.
I want to show a different perspective. I try to think outside of the box for a different approach. I think fall under the case of people that I have an idea of what's going on. It's just difficult to implement what's going on. But there is a plan.
Okay. This is always an awkward bit, isn't it? When you're a mile apart from, or 2 miles apart from each other, and you head on. And is there anything to do other than just fly straight into him and hope for the best?
Well, yeah, it depends on which airplane you're in as to whether this is a desirable position. And right now, the Mirage 2000 would be rubbing his hands, for a head-on shot.
A normal Mirage 2000.
Why is that? Just superior gunnery platform, or
well, his gun isn't canted down at 2.5 degrees. Yeah.
Okay, very good. So Bear's going to lose everything here, then trying to get round. Where Lecrep's going to try and maintain, but let's see what happens. So Blue is behind, but is what, a third of the energy or something? Well, no, half.
Yeah. Out of interest, I was talking to Guido, the F-15C pilot, and he reminded me that the F-15C gun is actually canted upwards to give it even more of an advantage in air-to-air.
Right, because you don't have to fly at an angle of attack to fire, right?
Yeah, I think it's a degree and a half or something like that.
Right.
It's the same for the F-18, yeah.
Makes sense, wouldn't it, guys?
And it's pretty, for the F-18, it's pretty deadly when you try to gun targets on the ground. It's like 4.5.
Oh, that would explain why I crash every time, wouldn't it, guys?
Yeah. Usually you have your lift vector below your sight.
Actually, really, really good move by Bear there to get up over the top and then just get pointy. He puts massive pressure on Lecrep, and Lecrep at the moment is banking on his airspeed, carrying him up and out of harm's way here.
Yeah.
Is the thing to do at this point? Just bear in mind what we. So Lecrep knows that the Mirage is slow. Lecrep knows that his best advantage is trying to get two circle at say 400-ish knots. It's the thing not to do when he knows that the Mirage is slow is now try and get lateral and try and build up that perfect turn.
Well, right. He has to. he had at the bottom of that circle, he had to have about 400 knots to make this work, because the dangerous part was once Bear decided to get pointy, Lecrep can't afford to get slow in the level, because what that does is it basically allows Bear to it doesn't depreciate Bear's energy state anywhere near as rapidly if Bear wants to go for a shot and has to pull up in the vertical to get it. Does that make sense? So if Lecrep stays in the level, or he ditches nose low, Bear would be rubbing his hands with glee at that point, because from Bear's perspective, he's got all the angles, and now his opponent is also allowing him to preserve or even improve his energy state. Whereas if Lecrep takes his higher energy state up, it's much more difficult for Bear to shoot him, not only because he's separating from Bear due to his higher energy state, but also because Bear will further depreciate his energy state if he pulls up in the vertical to go for the shot.
Okay, so he's got up to 400 plus knots again. What's he going to do now? What's the thinking, Lecrep?
Probably nothing.
Because you're
Get out of here.
2,000 feet, so this is almost within gunnery range, isn't it?
I like slow fight. Getting down to almost stall speed is my happy place.
Well, you're about to be happy, because there is nowhere left for that red to go.
That it's chasing the gun pipper, because I'm not at that level with knowing where to shoot. So that was a struggle for me to try and get the pipper onto him, but it's. I mean. That can come right with practice and a short amount of practice.
Absolutely, yeah. Go back to what LB was saying about, you want to be in that zone and you can count that as a win. I mean, would you consider him in that zone now? For me, he looks firmly attached to the rear in lag. And I can't see anything that Mirage is going to do. So it's just now having the gunnery to put the thing on the thing and.
Yeah, theoretically, that can do at this point.
Boom! Good shot. Well done. Yep. Really good there. Like that. Right. Does the Jeff want any so far?
Negative.
No.
4-0 so far.
Okay, guys. Let's speed things up a little bit and put them through at full speed. Right. We've got Mama in Mirage. Bear in Jeff. Is this gun still, guys?
AFM, yes.
Okay, let's see where we're going with this. Are they going to go up, or what are they going to do?
No.
Okay. Bear's going down. Okay.
Got to do something different.
Right. I mean, is that a fair point? Doing something different, at least in DCS, bearing in mind, it's a game, it's not life and death at the end of the day. Is doing something the other guy just doesn't expect, because it's not considered sensible or normal, a valid option? Or is it just going to be wrong?
Well, it's a great point you bring up. And actually taking your airplane high in a guns-only merge makes a lot of sense, because people tend to go blind on airplanes up against dark blue sky. Especially in DCS, if the opponent takes a lot of speed into the vertical and builds a lot of lateral displacement, and they put themselves up against sky, it's very easy to lose them if you're the guy underneath looking up at that. When that you're looking for a tiny speck against blue sky, everyone knows how hard that is to find them. So if labels aren't on, it's a very valid tactic to try and get the other guy to go blind.
And to compound that, the guy going down is almost certainly going to be not G-locked, but, starting to dark screen. That's something I've found. Going down, you're always working with a massive amount of G, whereas the guy, obviously, no problem at the top, though.
Yep, good point.
Getting that gun loaded.
My gun's set. Yep.
Yeah. That's a smart little move from Bear there. Look at that reversal. Whoosh! Mama's up to 500 knots. Going supersonic, just running away, I guess. Or... Zap, 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 zap. It's a high aspect, almost impossible in that jet. And you kind of...
I didn't even realise it was that close.
Yeah, traded it. It's like LB was saying, that if you miss, look how quickly that can be a reversal. Mama's got super slow now. I think Bear's about to get super slow as well. Maybe not. That Mirage keeps its nose pointed on things really well, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Even though it's just driving around sometimes 130 knots, but it's still pointing its nose at things.
Yeah.
Look at that. Crazy. Poor old Bear trying to do something about that. I just got to stop there. That was at 180 CAS doing... It's slowed down a bit now, but it's doing 18, 19 degrees per second. Which some fighters can't even barely do.
This fight can pan out. It can play out one of two ways. They either end up canopy to canopy at 80 knots, spiraling towards the deck, and the one that gets flushed out low loses. Or it can go the other way, where you see Bear tries to get his airspeed high and start rating before the Mirage can get to rate speed as well. But poor Bear at the moment is just he's just trying to shake this Mirage from behind him.
I really want to
Guns are probably stuck as well.
Mama's taking lead. She's going to go for a shot, I reckon. That looks like a shot coming up. Maybe not.
Yeah, getting closer.
Every match, I can just see the disadvantage of, excuse me, Jeff versus Mirage. I don't think there's much you can do about this, Bear.
Nah, just wait for it to happen.
Keep running, hope she runs out of ammo.
Yep.
It's good as
All
well.
6 bullets I put into the Mirage.
Also, I've seen a lot of, I'd call it trigger discipline. I mean, great shooting there. A lot of trigger discipline. If it was me or, the layman, I would be squirting and squirting and squirting. Whereas you guys have been really waiting for a couple of squeezes here or there, but there's been very few wasted bullets.
The Mirage only has about 125 rounds on, so it's very it's actually a valid BFM tactic to try and run a Mirage out of ammo.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much the only way I can beat them. I mean, with an F-15, you can waste just 600 rounds on a not big high aspect shot, can't you? And you're still going to have 400 rounds left. This thing here, you've got to have, I guess, a different trigger discipline in that you've got to wait until you're perfectly on their rear within 1,000 feet or something.
Yeah. Also, because you don't really have a very helpful gun sight, as you say, Cap, you do have to really close it in close. Whereas in the Hornet, quite often we'll take gunshots out to 4,000 or 5,000 feet with that scatter pattern. You'll land some shots. You don't have that in Mirage. Trying to land anything beyond like 2,000 feet, the Mirage is pretty low probability.
In terms of gunnery, the Mirage to me seems more like warbird fighting. I mean, there's no point of doing a 3,000 foot deflection shot in a warbird unless you're the luckiest man in the world. You got to wait until you're right on them, and like they were taught in the RAF, until they're filling your scope and you're in the right aspect, and then just fill them full. So it's very, very different. But okay, I mean, is that ever going to be a disadvantage? Well, obviously, but that's going to be a disadvantage for the Mirage sometimes, isn't it? In that it can just, if someone does get an F-15 against you, and they can just paste you from 3,000 feet away, even in a nasty aspect. Whereas you could never do that back to them, right?
Well, there was a long time there where we used to say that the F-15 was the hard counter to the Mirage because of the way that a lot of people were flying. It was they would just pull, 10 Gs at the merge and then spew out rounds, 900 rounds from a mile away, trigger down for days kind of thing, and just make life hard. But we've kind of worked out how to deal with that now. Okay, guys, this will be the last. This will be the last guns fight, and then we'll jump to the missile fights because things are going to change massively.
I think it's the last one. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it'll be Mirage. We've seen, and this has happened again and again. So merge, LB goes, well, more or less level, maybe slightly down this time. Almost like he's trying to give his rear away. Mama...
It's a trap.
It really is, isn't it? And Mama comes down and says, okay, that's an easy kill. I'm going to jump down on his arse like she's doing there, absolutely fine. And then he always has this little reversal. Watch this. There it is. And there's nothing Blue can do about that when he goes up, because she's got 180 degrees and gravity to beat. That's an interesting one. So I'm going to learn from that and watch what happens next. Okay, over the top. That's nice. Look at that. And I'm guessing she's got A, gravity, B, 500 knots. What's she going to do, right? She can't even turn.
Yeah.
And it's giving you your displacement as well, because she's bombing away at 500 knots and you're basically moving, pretty much tail sliding. Not an interesting thing. And that's pretty much giving you the match already, but let's have a look. So I'm just wondering how Blue gets around that, and I didn't see...
So remember what I said about having the remerge plan? That is my remerge plan right there. It's to get a low to high remerge effectively, where Blue's coming back down at me and I'm level, and then I pitch up. And as you say, because they're fighting the G on the way down. And also the fact is, because I'm relatively fast when I'm coming along the bottom here, like 400, 500 knots, they have to pull so much lead to try and land that shot on me that it's extremely low probability that they would actually kill me here. But the continuation for them is actually not that it's not that appealing, right? Because look at the airspeed when she comes back down perpendicular to my flight path, and I just pitch up. That she can't get the nose back up to me.
She's presumably already loaded. Yeah, well, kind of. She's already 10 degrees or something. But yeah, and I'm just wondering if she sees this play, she says, "Oh, Selby, I know exactly what he's going to do." I wonder what her play is now. Is it just to air brake? I don't know what you're going to do. What's Blue, knowing what you're going to do here? What's Blue going to decide to do to counter this?
Right. Well, she'd have to try and minimize the her descent at this point and lead turn me. So she'd need to keep the airspeed to something respectable. So it's an early decision not to go for a high aspect shot, but it's really hard because when you're in Mama's position here and you see this aeroplane tracking nicely on rails beneath you, of course you want to shoot it, right? So it's easy to fall for the trap. But really what she needs to be doing is actually pulling hard right now to minimize this descent through my flight path perpendicular.
Right. And then things could work out differently because she's not going to zoom up to 500 knots that way. And okay,
right,
very good. Let's skip ahead. So obviously, hang on, I've lost it now. So they come over the top. Red goes up on the tail. Oh, that's it. Looks like it's Red's game now, but we'll see what kind of phase. Yeah, so it looks good for Red. So I noticed Blue did a great thing of kind of humping up like that to try and lose her airspeed and not lose her turn rate, which was good.
Also, something I'll just add, if you pause there real quick, through that turn there, do you notice where my nose is pointing? It's in lag. So I'm not getting greedy. I'm not going for pure lead. I'm not trying to shoot her. I'm flying the control zone right now.
Yep. I see. So that what we're talking about is that line there always being behind the blue plane, right?
Yep.
Which is kind of almost unnatural to do, isn't it? Because you naturally want to always pull in front of that plane. But so you've already got to control that aft stick, I guess. Okay.
She's separating at the moment. You can see that distance out to 5,000 feet and growing right now. So her plan would be to try and get enough separation downrange to then pull hard and get a neutral merge again.
And she's done well. She's gone up to 700 knots, and it's going to take you a while to get there. But this is the thing that gets me. Although she's gone so fast, she's not actually really escaped you. We never got to a mile. It's really hard to outrun. And is that because she wasn't unloaded enough? Because she was never fully unloaded there, if you look. She was always doing that turn.
Well, it's just geometry, so I've just put myself on the inside of her turn. So I don't need the same speed she's got in order to close the distance because I'm closing on the inside of the turn.
I think what I'm getting at there is if you are gonna extend for that reason, then you want to have the plane as, like you said, as unloaded as possible. So obviously in a relatively low downwards dive, but straight, no turn, because then you can't exploit her geometry, right? If she just went in a perfect straight downwards, like a ski slope, perfectly straight downwards, it's just, that's one thing I've really picked up from this. You can't exploit it then. Obviously, it's not that easy because you might think he can gun you, so she's going to want to turn a bit for protection. But interesting. That's something I picked up from this anyway. If you're going to extend, make sure it's straight. If it's safe to do so.
That's actually in the F-16 BFM manual as well. Let's talk about that, where you have an angle of bank, but you're not actually pulling any G, and you just separate that.
Oh, we had an attempted brake check, I think. Or I've just lost it. Let me just have that real quick. So she's bunged on her brakes or done whatever, got the Alpha up and tried to outbrake the Mirage, and it, as we said there, it's not really going to work because look, he's already down 130 knots. And we've kind of fallen into the Mirage's forte now. As I've seen from this, it just seems to love driving around at 130 knots, which is a bit weird, but... So LB's keeping nice and slow, trying to keep blue ahead. And amazingly, she's got round and almost had a shot, which is actually quite impressive, I think. Oh, that was marvellous. Look at that. That was lovely. She really saw that one coming, didn't she? Look at that. Just have a look at that.
Actually, if you if you click the HUD view, on the bottom, you'll get to see my HUD. And
Roger. Let me just go. Oh, I'll do a track IR, shall I? Because you'll probably be off HUD. Here you go.
And Alt-Enter is full screen, Cap.
Yeah, I always forget that. Whoa, zoom, look at that. So there she is. So his head's going to be up like that, looking, being patient, being patient, being patient, being patient, being patient. Whereas I would have half stick at that point and just rammed the gun into her. Patient, patient, patient. Oh, is that going to be... Look at that. So that was an interesting shot. I mean, I can tell you now, that wasn't used in gun sight. I don't know. I'm just going to get rid of this. So what he's done is he's set a lovely little trap. She's kind of corkscrewing around nice and slow. And what he's done is he's set his aeroplane ahead in her path. Again, it's kind of a warbirdy thing to do. In her path, and just wait until she drives through it, at close range, obviously, well within 1,000 feet. Brrr, and one of those bullets is just bound to hit, right? It's because you're so close, so...
Yeah.
That's a lovely example of that.
It's beautiful.
Okay, guys. I mean, I've seen enough there to say guns, that's the Mirage all day, and we've talked about the reasons why. We're going to go to what I believe is going to be the first missiles. Now, this is what I think is going to fair things up a bit. Well, it's going to fair things up in that, well, at least it's resetting it to something new. However, seeing what I've seen about the Mirage, I can get the feeling it's just going to be able to whip its nose right round really slow for a one circle by the looks of things, but we'll see. Right, guys, I think this is the first missile fight. Leclerc, Jeff, LB, Mirage, so we're not going to see any going up anymore, probably. We're going to see something different. Let's see what the difference is going to be. Also, well, I was going to say that I don't want to be merging particularly fast, but Leclerc is quite fast, Mach 1.2, but we'll see how it is.
Yeah, and it was a mistake.
Because you want to turn here. It's all about, with the missile fight, it's all about who can turn quicker to the other guy, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And no aeroplane in the world, apart from maybe the SR-71, is going to turn well at 600 knots. So LB's got to...
Also, I'd be careful with the terminology there, because turn quicker can be interpreted one of two ways. Maximum sustained turn rate, or min radius. And actually in this you want min radius. You just want to one circle and get the missile off the rail. Right,
and that's something I've always got a little bit stuck with, because for me, turning around a circle quickest is always going to be your turn rate, because that's, you know, how far you've got around a circle. But it's not that simple when you put geometry in. Min radius is your important factor here, which I guess we're going to see an example of. And for that, what, low speed or? You
can see me coming in much slower than Lecrep here, 450 per 615.
Okay, and is this going to be full afterstick G limiter type situation?
Yeah, lead and get around. Exactly.
So
Okay.
this is another mistake. I was too fast and I still go lower. I still go low. So
I mean, that's pretty much a dead blue already, because look, Mirage just turns so quick. You got those.
Yeah, I'm pulling six Gs right there, and I can't turn at all.
You can't turn, and you can't slow down either, which is the interesting thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
none of the flights so far have used elastic override.
what the hell's that?
Yeah, there is no.
That's the paddle, like the paddle in the 18.
Is there one of those things in one of these planes?
In the Mirage.
There is in the Mirage.
Is there? Wow,
Mhm.
I did not know that. All right, okay.
Pretty
But
good
it's
one.
not in use yet.
And it turns it into an absolute monster.
Good lord.
As if it wasn't
Because
already.
it needed some help, obviously. Right. I mean, this has been a beautiful for LB, because what he's done is he's just what I would call a snap turn. That's probably not the right. But he's got slow, turned really quick, and he's done that displacement trick where he's let blue get away from him, right? Because he's basically not really been moving anyway. He's done a tiny little radius. He's turned around quick as well, so he's done turn rate and radius, a small radius as well. Blue's come shooting by, which is his dream scenario, because it's got him a good mile away. And it's taken a shot, and it may or may not hit, but and that's an easy kill. So that's the dream scenario for Mirage, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Wait. See what will happen there. See if people going wires up against it. So we've got Bear in Mirage at a lovely speed there, just sub 400 knots, maybe tiny bits less. LB in 450 knots in the Jeff. So all looking a bit more controlled here. Let's see. I like LB being in the Jeff because it's almost a bit too good in the Mirage. It kind of evens things out here. It makes it a bit more interesting. So let's see what happens
When
here.
it's against Bear.
Ping. So what are they going to do? So almost always with a almost always you're going to go down with a missile fight. Not maybe plumb down, but mostly down, right? Because that's the most efficient way of turning at these speeds. Is that right? For your one circle?
Yeah. Well, actually, it's got a name. It's called New BFM. So they worked out that if they split S at the merge min radius, that's the quickest way to get around for a shot. So.
Right. Okay. And like you said, once the shot's been taken, it doesn't matter if you're stalling or 100 knots, because you probably won the fight. Okay. So let's see what everyone's going to do. So look at that vector come around on the Mirage. It's beautiful. Turn rate 21 degrees per second. But Blue's done all right. Let's see how he's done that. So let's come around. There's a lot of pre-flaring going on, guys, as well. Is that just... I mean, you're just having a guess, or are you watching the other guy? Are you...
No, it's super important. It's because... You know, let's just say he wasn't in a Mirage and he was in a Hornet with a 9X. You know, pre-flaring at this point is improving your survivability.
So that's your muscle memory kicking in for a kind of hob fight then, or something. Then yeah. So filling the area with thingies. Okay, very good. Really ramp that alpha up to the limiter of 26 degrees. 8G there, both 8Ging it. So they're both trying the same, and they're both got about the same turn rate, and it's gonna be equal. Jeff's done beautifully there. In fact, actually won that. Just did better. Got him on his nose. It's just a case of pulling the trigger, getting the lock and pulling the trigger now. I guess it was just a suboptimal turn from Red there. Wasn't quite as efficient as Blue's turn.
I think the Mirage gets the missile lock a bit easier than the Jeff. I found getting a missile lock with the Jeff.
I had the missile lock, but I couldn't. The missile didn't want to come off. I was struggling to fire the missile. I definitely had the missile lock tone from. There's a small delay before I get nose on, and just during that time it was me panicking trying to fire.
But it's interesting to see if this is going to fuse in time, because they're both 300 knots at 2,000 feet. I don't know if a Sidewinder would even fuse at this range, but it did. Yours didn't, look, but his was just in time.
We had a mid-air.
It became a mid-air.
Well, he was well, okay, but it was dead anyway because that missile.
So that was a Fox 5.
It was a Fox 5, was it?
Fox 4.
Good match, really. You both came down in that kind of typical heart shape or whatever you call it. Blue's just got his nose better. I don't know what that was. Speed management, more aft stick. I don't know. It was just a slightly better turn, wasn't it? And got him locked on. Okay, right. LB. So swapped. LB is his beloved Mirage. Bear in the Jeff. Weird. LB's doing something weird. I don't know what it's doing. It's going up. So we'll see. It's just decided to do it. And interestingly, Bear has reciprocated. And look at the vector on that blue. Look at that sucker. Let's have a look at those turn rates real quick. I don't know what Bear's up to, but I mean he's going to bleed down now. But let's just have a look. So let's just see that entry speed, shall we? Because we're dealing with pretty much IAS, this is going to be pretty much the same at any altitude, I guess, the speed we're looking at here. So just above 400 is entered. It's 20 degrees alpha, so straight up almost onto the limiter of nearly 9G, so 8 to 9G. Obviously, you can't really sustain 9G, but you can just about sustain 8G. Turn rate 22 degrees per second, which is as good as it's going to get, pretty much. And it's bleeding off now, obviously, because it's slowed down. It's now just full aft stick and burner on. But look how quickly it's got around. A poor old Bear is struggling at 11 degrees per second. That's a one-way fight. Let's speed that up. Definitely can do now. It's dead. Got some flares out, but boom. Great example there. So this time, any reason why it didn't go down? Just variety, I suppose. Fancied going lateral this time.
Yeah, just to mix it up. Yeah.
Okay, there's not much else to say about that. Very good. The boys again. This time we've got, and I quote, LB Jeff, Mama is in Mirage. Quick look at the speeds. Always perfectly 450 for LB. Oh, really fast from Mama. I think she's got a bit excited because she's going to struggle to turn that sucker around. Up they go. Now she's gone guns high. And LB is just going to pluck her out of the sky.
But she has the speed for it, so...
She has got the speed for it, so that was kind of a plan there. But, I mean, she's a bit of a sitting duck there, though, isn't she? She's 200 knots. And that's a missile, and she is 110% dead. No, didn't track. Okay. Got away with it. But... So, LB, you're going to be patient now. You're not just going to snapshot, right? You're going to be patient. Let her extend, because you got a missile, right? So you don't want to...
Well, now it's important to be in the right mentality. Are you in a Fox 2 mentality or are you in a guns fight? And now you have to switch to thinking you're in a guns fight, to be honest. If you're 1,500 feet behind like this and you've got the angles, you're now guns. I would put yourself in the mentality that you're in guns BFM now and fight your absolute best guns BFM that you can.
Oh, so you're saying literally change to guns now, not use the missile?
Yes, because the trap is that if you try to go for a Fox 2 shot, those are two different types of BFM in a sense. You know, like here now you just want to go control zone BFM, go for your Wes and go for a guns shot at this type of range.
How interesting.
Pull for a Fox 2.
No, because my natural instinct at this point is, I've still got a missile. Brakes on. Let her just do her thing, fly away, get the tone and fire. So that's an interesting... yeah. Very interesting. Okay, so let's see how this develops. So you're just going to bosh around in lag until you've got your perfect solution. I know it's going to be hard in this aeroplane. It's nice to see the Mirage in this awkward situation where it hasn't been much today. And see how LB controls this. Now, Mama's gone and bunged the brakes on and got slow. Can LB stay behind? He can. And you're almost doing it by, I don't know, you just full off sticking hope for the best? Or are you trying to get a little bit of lateral in there?
I'm trying to get off. If you imagine that she's on a popsicle going downwards, I'm trying to get off that popsicle. Right. I want a little bit of lateral displacement so that I've got time to wash my speed off.
Right. So if you imagine a kind of corkscrew here, you're trying to kind of widen that corkscrew, I guess, laterally.
Widen it. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. It's paid off. Okay. In this awkward kind of spiral now. I saw you eyeing up a gun there, just like you would have the Mirage. That's interesting.
Right.
But obviously it's not going to pay off with this plane. But if you're in the Mirage, look where you've put her. Zap, 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 zap.
And you can see the risk there if you miss that as well.
Well, it's a reversal now. It's a reversal. Look. Exactly. She's gone down to 100 knots. Zap, zap, zap.
Nearly killed me. So
that's going to be the risk. Okay, we've literally just had a fight reversal here. By the looks of things. Oh, looks like they're going to neutralise it. No. Red's on top now. And she's slow where she wants to be. Zap! Just too high aspect. Too close.
Too close.
And flares. Too close. Yep, there you go. I think... No. Yes, she's got another missile. So it's still even Stevens. And she's still behind. Although that's a nice cheeky little 100 knot over the top thing. Zap! Oh! Really good fight. Best fight so far.
Yeah. Me there.
Yeah.
Fox 4. Every Air Force in the world has the Fox 4 cap.
There we go. Yeah, I use it a lot accidentally. Well done, guys. That was really good fun. Both absolutely fighting top notch. And like I said, I like LB in his JF-17 because he's still doing all his techniques, but he's just not as good in that plane. So it kind of evens it out a bit. Right. Getting towards the end here. We probably won't do all of them, but we'll do maybe a couple more. I'm getting a good feel for what we're doing now. So let's just have a look at the states. LB Mirage 3000, 450 knots, of course. Mama, she really likes going in. She's going to do the same thing. Look, she was going to go over the top at 700 knots. I nearly worked out for her last time, so we'll see. I know she's not. Well, she's just done it wrong this time because she's gone 700 knots lateral. Look at that! Ah, I think that can't do that in real life. Look at that there.
Yeah, it turns. It turns pretty well. Yeah.
So is it as 430? 25 degrees per second. Radius 2,000 feet. I mean, that's smaller than F-16 radius. 29, 30... Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Let me just do that again because it's interesting. Keep looking at the wrong numbers. No, it was my bad. 20 degrees per second. I mean, it's still pretty fast, you know. Angle of attack above the limiter. I'm not sure if there is a limiter on this plane, but yes, there is, isn't it? 26 degrees. 2,000 feet all the way. Look at that. It's so ridiculous. So you might as well have just started on her arse here because look at that, nothing she can do. Zap! Again, perfect miraging there. That term. I really want to see someone else be able to do that other than LB in the Mirage and see how what LB does to counter that. Okay, so I apologise.
Got a speed on this time.
Right, she's got a speed ride this time, so she would be able to turn. Okay, right, same speeds and turn. LB's gone lateral. Both gone lateral. Let's look watch these geometries. So I mean, how LB manages to whip that round at the end there. And I think they're going to be too close. They are. It's going to get exciting. Right. So you've both basically done as well as each other, more or less. You haven't. Neither of you managed to get the shot. So we're now. Are we in the mentality again of gunfight now?
Yep. This is only BFM at this point.
No.
Definitely.
How interesting. Right. So we're reverting to our other game, old style of fighting them. Obi's gone over the top. Mum was just flying really slow downwards. And she's lucky to get away with it. Oh, but that may have been...
No, she got shot there.
Oh, she
did? She got shot. Yeah.
Right, we'll leave that there.
Right. Cap, if I can make a suggestion after this one, go to the last fight of this TAC view and then the last 4 of the next TAC view.
Okay, let's get to the last one here, guys. Which is
this one you have an elastic one.
Elastic one. Right, so we've got...
Are you sure it's this one, Bear? It's not before?
This is number 16. It's Mama versus Low Blow.
Okay.
Agreed. She's in the Mirage, but it should be good. Missiles is this. Mama's a bit fast. She's going over the top. She will be able to turn that thing pretty quickly, presumably. Although no, only 10 degrees per second, so that was pretty laborious. I think I don't think she's trying to pull it round for some reason. For some reason, she's trying to get position, I think, rather than a snap here, but okay. Or she's lost sight, which actually just... Yeah, she's just lost sight. Do you want to leave that one, guys? I think she's just... am I wrong?
It could have been a lost sight, but this was the only one where the Jeff managed to kill the Mirage.
Right.
I can't remember the exact reason.
Well, I'm pretty sure Mama's just... I watched that all round and I don't think she ever visualised him. I don't think she ever got him.
But that sounds about right then.
Just follow it through. I think LB will just see her now and just step in there.
Yeah, it was a lost sight.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, we'll leave that one, guys, because, you know, as you all know, once you've lost sight, you're dead, right? That said, she's back in it now. Look. I think she's seen him. Yep, she has. And she's got position, so I'm not sure how... Oh, that's a missile all day. 4,000 feet. LB seen her. So I don't know how he's going to come back to this. That's beautiful for the Mirage. You sure it's not gunfight?
It is gunfight, Cap. We went back to guns.
Stupid. I was watching the whole thing thinking they're fighting really stupid with missiles. Right. Alright.
It was guns and paddle. Elastic override. If required.
Okay.
But it's a bit different in the Mirage than in the F-18 for the elastic mode, the paddle. The control are not the same at all, from what I experienced.
Yeah, it's a toggle normally, isn't it, in the Mirage?
No, I think you need to hold it.
Yeah, you still have to hold it. Yeah.
Boom!
Yeah.
Brake check from LB. It didn't pay off, as we expected.
Yeah, she's out of speed.
But she's controlling us all the time now. I don't see what Blue can do here. Must have a nifty little trick up his sleeve. It's flying around at 100 knots, for God's sake, look. Oh, that was cheeky. Oh, she's neutralised it. They're down neutral. I don't know. He did it by almost standing on its tail and coming down at 100 knots, which is a bit weird. I'm not sure what she did there. I think she kind of gave her tail up there for some reason. And she was just so she was so stunned at that Jeff going around here at 110 knots. And she was at 90 knots. Interesting.
And I think she crashed in the end, I think.
Roger. Okay. Alright, guys. Very good. We'll quickly punch onto the other one, but I'm aware that I've taken 2 hours of your life, and that is longer than usual, so we will expedite.
The Crepe, what order did you do it in? Were the last 4 hubs, or...?
Yeah, we started with guns.
Okay, so go to the last 4, 6, 7, 8, and 9.
Okay, I think... You know what, we'll just watch them backwards, as in the last one first, because it just makes it easier, so...
There was no elastic at all in those. It was Penguin versus me all the time.
Right, let's just stop it there. Look, stop it. The Crepe, Mirage, Penguin, Jeff, so we've got a new player in here. And is this missiles, did you say?
Yeah.
Roger. Penguin's gone up, which is interesting. And the Jeffrey, so he's going to be a bit of a sit and duck. That Mirage is just whacked his nose around. Look at that, and that's game over already. And zap zap! Fox 2. Oh, look at the cheeky little young man! Did not see that coming.
No, I think I messed up on my control because we had to rebind everything. It was shot after the update.
Roger.
And
okay. He had no right to win that, really, did he? He was just kind of sitting up there.
No. We had to rebind a few things, so yeah, there was some mess ups, but on both sides. So you'll see.
Off we go again. missiles. Stick it in. Le Crep, Mirage, Penguin, Jeffrey again. So Penguin's gone down at a lovely speed. Le Crep's gone lateral. And his turn is just whoop whoop. Look at that. And look at the displacement. And that's a kill shot already. 2 miles. Bread and butter for that missile. Flares have done the job. And are they going to force a gunfight? No. Good kill. Red always had it in control there, didn't he?
As you can guess, it was the fight with low blow, so I tried to apply some of the stuff I learned.
Roger, absolutely. I mean, yeah, that turn was just an LB turn, basically, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So really using that Mirage to stand it on its end and just whip that nose right round. Okay, Penguin, so same guys, opposite planes. Both down in their little heart shape. It's beautiful. And that Mirage just half sticks all the way around on the limiter. And zap. Just now getting a lock and firing, but that's dead. Beautiful. All these are by the book for the Mirage. One more, and then we'll terminate, because I think we've...
No, I think it's the last. Anyway, it's the last op.
Alright, we'll try this.
Yeah, but what's interesting, having looked at the stats on paper at the start and drawing
Isn't it interesting
that they looked very similar, and then you see it in practice and the Mirage just walks all over the Jeff.
Right. It just shows. It just shows, doesn't it?
I think there's only one time I got a guns kill on Jeff on the Mirage, but that was, I think, because Lecrae messed up in the turn or something like that, or he lost sight of me. But every single time, it's just the radius.
That just dominated in that radius, didn't he? Cut right in literally half his radius there. What? Nothing Jeff can do about that. We're into this old thing of Mirage chasing behind Jeff trying to go fast, but something wrong with Jeff. There's something wrong with Mirage there, but yeah, I think Mirage has given up.
Yeah, I think I lost sight of him there.
Whoops. It can always happen. Dead man. And Timber. Right, guys. So, there was a good prediction at the beginning. On paper, on these tests at least, pretty much equal. In reality, because of that ability to get really slow, really quickly, to do a really low radius of turn, both of those things make it A, dominant in the gunfight, and for its superior gunnery, as well, I guess. And, you guys should be summarising this. Why am I doing it? Go on. And we've got the stats here, sorry, I should say. Results. Mirage 2000 gunfight, 8 versus 2. Clear cut there. Hobbs, well, they weren't actually Hobbs. They were normal missiles. 7 versus 3.
The Mirage clearly does seem to be the much stronger winner in this contest. But the JF-17 is an incredible machine. There are extremely skilled JF-17 pilots out there that could easily give a better run for its money than the Mirage. I wouldn't knock the JF-17 down. It's just going up against an extremely good contender.
So it's like in this case, the Mirage has got the Jeff's Achilles heel a bit. What would you say if you said, I know this is an impossible situation, but if you've got equal skilled pilots in each plane with that plane, would you still say the Mirage has got the advantage? By the looks of things, I would. But what do you think?
9 out of 10.
Definitely. If they're equal pilots, the Mirage has the cards.
So the only way you're going to beat it is if you just pull the Mirage to the ground and try and race him. Other than that, you're pretty much just going to lose every time because it can just pull so much more into you.
Right. Well, I don't feel so bad about all those times I've been shot down by Mirage at close range now. Now I know it can do that. Okay, guys. Any final thoughts before we sign off?
Thank you very much to Lobo for...
Yeah, thanks for bringing
joining us and all the info and that.
Yeah, thank you for...
No, you're most welcome. And if you need any help in future, let me know. One thing I'll say is if you ever meet a Mirage that's actually pulling elastic mode, watch out because it just... You've seen what it's like without it. And then when they're actually using it, it just goes crazy. It gets really insane. All
right, guys. Thank you very much as ever. I'm going to sign off and I'll see you guys later.
See you.
Ta-ra!